Roethlisberger, drafted in that order. He's made 6 Pro Bowls and won 2 Super Bowls. Eli's made 4 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, more than Roethlisberger. Rivers has made 8 Pro Bowls, no Super Bowls. I think that everyone would agree Roethlisberger is number 1 on that list because though he didn't have the same kind of Iron Man career that Eli and Rivers did, Roethlisberger, like Eli was the kind of guy, usually not a Pro Bowler, but could come up big in the big moments. Rivers was more often than any of them a Pro Bowler, but you didn't trust him under pressure as it turned out to the extent you might the other guys missing that Super Bowl. Roethlisberger sort of splits the difference. 6 times he was a Pro Bowler, and he was generally among the top 5 or certainly 10 quarterbacks in the league, and he's got the 2 Super Bowls. But it's not as though he is a Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees, where every year he's a top 3 quarterback. 6 years out of 17 seasons you're in the Pro Bowl means usually you're not. I do think, however, that since he was often enough, since he was the kind of guy you'd want at quarterback under pressure, since he does have the Super Bowls, he will make the Hall of Fame, and were he to win another one, at that point you could say, all right, look, whatever else you want to say, there was something about that guy. He was able to lead his team to championships. Because remember, he's playing in a pass-happy league, in a pass-happy era, on a pass-happy offense. So when you play for a long time under those conditions, yes, you're going to be up there in passing yards, touchdowns, and those kind of things. By the way, as Eli Manning is. I think in order to really be considered on that next level, in that inner sanctum of quarterbacks, when we say all-time greats, when you're talking about who's the GOAT, at least that name comes up. What about that guy? Like Brett Favre won't get any votes nowadays as the GOAT, but his name will come up. What about Brett Favre? What about John Elway? It ain't going to be what about Ben Roethlisberger unless he wins another chip.
You're wrong. All-time greats are an entirely different category than the GOAT. The GOAT is a different discussion, but all-time greats, there's a plethora of individuals that have been in that conversation, and Ben Roethlisberger is one of them. Anytime you've been to 3 Super Bowls and you've won 2 Super Bowl titles, even though you didn't perform that well in one of them when you beat Seattle, the bottom line is you're going to warrant consideration. You've been in the league for 16 years, even though it's really 15 because he didn't play this past season because 2 games in, he was hurt, or a game and a half in, he was hurt. So in the 15 seasons that he's had prior to that, he made the playoffs 10 times. He's been to multiple conference championship games. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. He's won a couple of Super Bowls. You take that into consideration, and along with the fact that he has consistently been a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League, then you take into account his nickname, Big Ben. What does he do? Shrug off defenders. That's one of the things, that's one of the most memorable things that you're going to recall about Ben Roethlisberger when his career is over. So many guys would fall down at the sight of oncoming rushes. Ben Roethlisberger made a career of shrugging dudes off and using his feet, even though he ain't the fastest dude in the world, of course, shrugging dudes off and extending plays. The kind of stuff that he did, what he put his body through, his level of toughness at the quarterback position has to be recalled. And I think when you take that all into consideration, along with the fact that there are 2 Super Bowl rings and 3 Super Bowl appearances and a consistent presence for the most part in the postseason, all of those things puts him there in the conversation among the all-time greats. Not the GOAT, because he's never been that, but an all-time great,
top 10?
Unquestionable. Yes.
Yeah, see, I think this is going to be so much about how you perceive it and what all-time great means. If you're going to say that means being in the conversation for the greatest player or greatest quarterback of all time, I don't think Ben Roethlisberger fits there. If you're going to be one of those people that falls into place that if you're a Hall of Famer, if you're a guy that was able to bring championships to an organization and have sustained great play, I believe that's who Ben Roethlisberger is, and I believe that makes him one of the all-time great players that have played in this league. When you think about the toughness, when you think about the durability, not necessarily in the sense of not being hurt, but being able to play through injury. We've seen Ben Roethlisberger do that for over a decade and a half. And when you look at a draft that has Phillip Rivers, a draft that has Eli Manning, and then you see Ben Roethlisberger taken later at 11, and to me, having the greater career of the 3 players, I believe that says something. He was never the greatest quarterback in the season. He probably was never the greatest quarterback of his era or generation. But what he's done for a storied and historic organization, bringing them 2 more Super Bowls in the fashion that he did it, I believe that's huge. I believe that makes him an all-time great. Now, if Ben Roethlisberger goes to another Super Bowl and he wins it as the man, he wins it as a top 6, top 7 quarterback in his league, and it is because of him that his team has or hoists another Lombardi trophy, I believe that puts him into those conversations. I believe now we start to see him differently, because what's gotten Drew Brees into those conversations is sustained greatness, having greatness late in his career, his team having success late in his career. And Ben Roethlisberger has an opportunity to do that. His story is not fully written. The last chapters are still to be done. And so if Ben Roethlisberger can recreate some of the magic this team had early on during his career, he can do that. I want to point something else out.
Wow.
When he won those early championships, it was about defense. I talked to Coach Tomlin this offseason, and he said, you know what, RC? I'm starting to get the same feeling I had walking into stadiums that I had when you played, when it was Troy, and it was Big Hamp, and it was James Ferrier. And if he's starting to have this feeling, this means Ben Roethlisberger can do less. And if he can do less and get a championship, being the man, being established, we're going to have to start putting him in some of those conversations.
Ryan, here's where I'm at with this. When I talk about the San Francisco 49ers, and people get on me because I don't give Jimmy Garoppolo the praise he deserves, what I say is he's not a scrub. I'm not saying that. But I'm able to point to a multitude of the things about the San Francisco 49ers before I get to their so-called franchise quarterback. I'm looking at their secondary led by Richard Sherman. I'm looking at the defensive line led by Nick Bosa. I'm looking at their wide receivers. George Kittle is arguably the best tight end in football, even though I think it's still Travis Kelce. I'm looking at Kyle Shanahan's play calling, and then I get to Jimmy Garoppolo. Even though the Steelers obviously had their defense, and it's definitely to be renowned and respected and all of that other stuff, tell me 1 year, because remember, Ben Roethlisberger, his rookie year, won all 13 of his regular season games. He was 13-0. So you tell me 1 year that Ben Roethlisberger has been with Pittsburgh, that it didn't start with Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not saying the other components didn't matter and they weren't integral. What I'm saying is there isn't 1 year in his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers where we didn't look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, Ben Roethlisberger. The point is that he was that dude where, good or bad, you expected something from him. I think that contributes to the all-time great conversation.
They won 8 games. They won 8 games without Roethlisberger this year. That's a pretty good experiment, meaning because of Mike Tomlin, that team can't be less than 500. In fact, that's a statement of fact. It's never happened.
Ben Roethlisberger didn't always have Mike Tomlin.
Means you're 500. What does Ben Roethlisberger mean? You got another 2 wins over that. You like when you think of the Steelers, you think of like a 10-win team. Right? That's good. A quarterback can give you 2 wins over the coach. That's good. He's really good. In fact, I would even say he's great, and I'd say he's a Hall of Famer. I think it's indisputable. He's a Hall of Famer. But is he top 10? Like, a lot of guys come to mind before him, and what I'm saying is, forget about GOAT. You're right, you don't have to be a GOAT to be considered the all-time great, but should you be at least considered for the top 10? He wins another one, he'll be in the top 10. If he doesn't, I don't think he will be.
And Stephen A., I know we got to go. I'm going to say this. In 2008, 2009, when we won the Super Bowl, one of the last things we were thinking about was walking in with Ben, because I knew that those other 10 dudes I was going to play defense with wasn't going to give up a lot of points. So what we were thinking about the offense is just don't turn it over, because if they don't score, we'll probably get a touchdown and we can win this thing 7-0.
Yep. And RC, speaking of that really good defense, and Max, you said they had 8 wins with Big Ben hurt. A lot of that had to do with the signing of Minkah Fitzpatrick. He was such a difference maker. He's going to join us in the second hour. Looking forward to that interview right here on First Take. Ryan, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up here on First Take tomorrow, we have our quarterback continued series, and we focus on Deshaun Watson in H-Town. What will the future hold for the Texan star without his top weapon? Find out that Friday right here on First Take. Plus, could Tua Tagovailoa go as high as number 2? You'll hear from him when we return.
I know this is not a popular stance, so be it.
If you zip it right now, you'd have got your feelings hurt.
He's being sensitive. It's so comically bad.
I mean, damn, he dissed him, man. That's very disrespectful.